Could it be that there are millions of misdiagnosed insomniacs around today who actually don't have insomnia at all? When you wake up in the morning, even if you don't remember the dreams you've had, your body does. There are fundamental changes you can make to your relationship to sleep and dreaming that will go way beyond sleep hygiene and will actually work.
Now then, welcome to Reconnect, the podcast for people who want to heal and grow from life's tough times. I'm Joe Tudor, the founder of Reconnect and a mental health keynote speaker. Today, I'm joined by Charlie Morley. Charlie is a lucid dream teacher and sleep expert, and his teachings have had the biggest impact on my sleep. We'll be talking about why people who are experiencing depression and anxiety often struggle with their sleep. We dispel a lot of the common myths about sleep, and we talk about the practical 3 things you can do right now to improve how you sleep. Right, here's Charlie. Researchers estimate that between 80 to 90% of people that experience depression also struggle with the sleep. Why do you think that might be?
Great point. I'd never actually heard that stat, but it seems to make so much sense. I think like every biological functioning in the body and mind is detrimentally affected by poor sleep. So whether it's that people are depressed and their sleep is being affected by that, or whether they have poor sleep, which is leading to depression, I guess it's a kind of a chicken and egg thing. But good sleep is the like underlying foundation of all mental healthiness. However, when you hear that, if you're depressed, like that, what do we work with? Oh, let's try and sleep more. So what I'd like to share, if you're interested in that question, is like, how can we help people who are currently working with depression to get better sleep?
Yeah, I'd love to go down that route. And I think, because one thing, I thought I had a thing called insomnia. And it's similar to the depression, where I thought I had a medical problem called depression, which throughout this podcast we've kind of unpacked. But I also felt like I went to my doctor because I had insomnia and I wanted to sleep. I thought there was something wrong with me.
There's a guy who did his PhD called The Sleeping Habits of the Early Britons or something like that. His research concluded that this 8-hour chunk where we sleep monophasically, right? We all sleep in one big gap, is like really, really young. We've only been trying to sleep that way for about 200 years.
Wow.
And before then, and it changes around the time of the Industrial Revolution, we used to sleep in 2 stages. Of course, it like fluctuated based on when the sun went down and stuff like that. And of course, in the UK, sun can go down like 4 p.m. in the winter. So it fluctuates, seasonal fluctuations. But essentially, most people would go to sleep within a couple of hours of the sun going down. Why? Because candles were really expensive. Back in the day, in the 1800s, they used to be made of whale oil. It was really expensive, right? So hardly anyone could afford candles. If you did, you could only use them for like a couple of hours a night, right? So most people would be asleep within 2 hours of sun going down. They would sleep for 3 to 4 hours, maybe 4.5. Very interesting when you look at the 3 90-minute cycles that people go through in that first half of the night. Around 4.5, 3, 4, 5 hours later, people would wake up. Like society would wake up. Pubs would reopen, churches would reopen. There are whole mass ceremonies that you'd do in the gap between the first and the second sleep, spelt in like Old English, like S-L-Y-P-T-E, sleeped. And the reason we know this factually is because a lot of crimes were committed in that 2-hour gap. So if you look at the court records that go back hundreds and hundreds of years, you find a lot of people had their houses robbed in that time because they would leave their house, go to the pub or go to the church, and the robbers would be like, oh, cool, let's go and nick their stuff, right? Farmers would milk their cows. They believed that the cows had better milk at this time. But basically, society would wake up for 2 hours in the middle of the night for thousands of years, literally since records began. Actually, records only go back about a few hundred years before then, but we assume that way before then. And then people would go back to sleep a couple of hours later for another 3, 4, 5 hours with seasonal fluctuations until the sun rose, right? So they're still getting between 7 to 9 hours sleep, but crucially, there's a 2-hour gap in the middle. Now, the most common form of insomnia in the West today is called sleep maintenance insomnia, which means, and the description is this: the subject is able to fall asleep. They will stay asleep for 3 to 4 hours and then wake up feeling bright as a button for 1 to 2 hours, and then are able to fall back asleep afterwards if they allow themselves to go back to bed. Could it be that there are millions of misdiagnosed insomniacs around today who actually don't have insomnia at all? They have, anthropologically speaking, a really natural way of sleeping. But most people don't know this. And your first port of call is your GP, your doctor, with full respect to doctors. My sister qualified a few years ago, and she confirmed in her 6-year training, she had 2 hours on sleep in 6 years. And we know that over 30% of the conditions that people go to their general practitioner doctor to are directly linked to sleep. And the doctors know nothing about sleep. So it could be that. It could be that a lot of people believe they have insomnia because we're selling them the lie of the 8-hour sleep cycle, that you have to stay asleep for 8 hours straight, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And it's just not true. Like, based on an 8-hour sleep cycle, you wake up 4 to 5 times anyway. Everyone does, these micro awakenings, but people don't recognize them unless you are hypervigilant because you're stressed out and have orthosomnia, this kind of neurotic preoccupation with getting enough sleep. So then you notice these micro awakenings, and then you actually are awake, cortisol and adrenaline hit the system, and now you really are struggling to get back to sleep. So I think a big thing about insomnia is knowing this, that the myth of the 8-hour sleep cycle is a myth. Sleep how you want to sleep, and look at sleep in a 24-hour period. So yes, 7 to 9 hours is good within a 24-hour period. So if you're only getting like 4 hours sleep at night, if you can get a cheeky 1 or 2 hour nap during the day, you're much closer to that 7-hour threshold. And actually that kind of biphasic sleeping, where you get a big chunk at night, but then a couple of hours in the afternoon, is a really good way to sleep for a lot of people. And of course, a lot of Latin nations still sleep like that.
So one of the biggest causes for insomnia is ultimately just the way we've structured our society and our work, and the fact that we're kind of given this period where we have to sleep without waking up. One of the other issues, I'm guessing, because I'm lucky that I don't often struggle sleeping through. For me, and what I often hear from people who've experienced depression or anxiety, is that as soon as they put their head on the pillow, and I can definitely relate to this, I start thinking thoughts that I don't want to have. Like, but I'm exhausted. I've gone to bed because I'm absolutely shattered. But as soon as my head hits the pillow, I start having all sorts of thoughts.
Yes.
Why might that be?
So exactly as you described, when your head hits the pillow, you're going to enter a stage of sleep called the hypnagogic state. It is stage 1 of sleep, but it doesn't really feel like sleep because you can still hear the sounds in the room. You can still feel your body in the bed. But we know you're in the sleep stage because the brain goes into deep alpha and theta. It's that kind of nodding dog thing where you're kind of like, you're falling asleep like that, but you haven't blacked out yet. That's stage 1 of sleep called the hypnagogic state. We know something really interesting happens in the hypnagogic state. A part of a kind of functionality of the mind, sometimes called the egocentric preference system, right? Which is basically the part of the mind that keeps unwanted thoughts out of conscious awareness. And the egocentric preference system is like playing whack-a-mole. You remember that game at the fair, right?
Yeah.
So during the day, anytime an unwanted thought comes up, a depressive thought or a racist thought or a sexual thought or whatever that doesn't fit your view of who you think you are, bam, it's playing whack-a-mole like that. When we enter the hypnagogic state, the egocentric preference system, that part of the mind that is playing whack-a-mole, sleeps at their post. So suddenly the mind, all these moles that have been, been hit down during the day, they pop up. All of these intrusive thoughts, these unwanted thoughts, that heartbreak or heartache you've been trying not to look at during the day, bam, that hits in the hypnagogic. Now, just knowing that is really, really helpful for people. Like perhaps you tonight, or when someone's listening or watching this, when those intrusive thoughts pop up, rather than having a fear of them, perhaps they could switch to a fascination of like, oh shit, that's what the guy on the podcast said. Isn't that interesting? They're just popping up. There's nothing to kind of to hit them down. And once we do that, that sense of kind of acceptance of our experience, actually the moles pop up and there's no food, there's nothing to kind of sustain them, bam, and they dissolve back down. They pop up, they dissolve back down again. But when they're popping up and we don't know what's going on, we can have this sense of like, what's wrong with me? Why, when just at the moment I need to relax, just at the moment I need to black out, all of these intrusive thoughts have come out. Is there something wrong with me? Yes, there is something wrong with me. Bam. I'm in this like depressive spiral again. So if that is happening to you or anyone listening to this, some really good things you can do are meditation practices within the hypnagogic, like Yoga Nidra. So, at the end of like a physical yoga session, usually they do the 2 minutes of Shavasana, right? Corpse pose, you lie down, you have a nice little kind of micro nap. Imagine that, but extended, like 20 or 30 minutes.
I definitely want to come back at the end. I want to come back to all the tools we can use, because I think that's where you're really bang on the money. But I want to go even deeper on this, because this sounds amazing. Amazing is the wrong word to use because it's really tough. Because as you say, it's a game of whack-a-mole. There's a reason why we want to keep these thoughts down throughout the day, probably because they're unmanageable.
Yeah.
We might feel like we're unable to cope. And as you were talking then, I found myself thinking about going to therapy and speaking to a therapist. And sometimes a therapist says, what do you want to talk about? And it can be quite hard to know what to say. But it actually sounds like I was thinking as you were describing that, like, wow, actually, the stuff that comes up in that
Hypnagogic, yeah.
hypnagogic stage could be really powerful stuff to explore with a therapist. Because if it's stuff you've been trying to keep pushed down, might need to have some attention paid to it.
Yeah, maybe a better question for the therapist rather than what do you want to talk about this week is what do you think about when you close your eyes at night? Like, that'd be a good question.
Yeah, that would, wouldn't
Because
it?
you're asking like that, what comes up when you're alone? What comes up when you're in the darkness, literally in the darkness of your own mind? Like those thoughts that come up are it is such an interesting litmus test, like an insight into the current state of your mind. And everybody has it. Everybody has it. It's this, I think it's why they often, make this joke about the most powerful person in a political couple is the person you sleep next to, is the wife or husband of the politician or whatever, because they're the ones who are there witnessing how it is that someone sleeps.
Wow.
What thoughts come to them, what is the last thing they want to talk about before they go to bed. In that intimate space of the bed, a lot comes up. It's this kind of place that can be such a nurturing womb-like place. But if you're working with heartbreak or heartache, it can be fucking horrible.
Yeah.
You can really get to the stage where you don't want to go to bed. Like when I was having really bad nightmares, like the bed was a place of failure. I didn't want to go to bed because that was the place where the trauma came back. That was the place I had no control over. And the kind of irony that it's supposed to be this womb-like place where we can relax and kind of black out. And then actually for many people, it's a battleground between them and these kind of depressive spirals.
I found myself thinking about drinking as well. Like, I don't drink as much as I used to. I used to drink a lot. I think it was a coping mechanism for me. But what you were talking about, the game of whack-a-mole and that part of the mind that gets kind of toned down, that keeps the thoughts down. I was wondering if alcohol has a similar effect, because I found for me, when I drink, stuff would come up, felt quite emotional, childlike, but thoughts would come up that I wouldn't necessarily have when I was sober.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought you were saying that alcohol was like a big hammer of the whack-a-mole.
No, it was the opposite for me.
Oh,
Vodka.
interesting.
Vodka. I used to joke at uni. It was like, I'm not advocating for this, but I was a student that used to drink, and it was also like, what's the cheapest way to get drunk?
Yeah.
Which I think back then I should have seen was a warning sign in itself. But I was a really emotional drunk on vodka. I'd go on these lads' nights out and just take myself home often. So for me, when you were talking about the whack-a-mole, I experienced that, I think, when I was drinking too.
Yeah, I mean, drinking is a altered state of consciousness. We talk about all these like psychedelic therapies and stuff like that. Actually, in this case, it's very interesting. You're saying that actually there was something about the lack of inhibition that alcohol gave you that allowed these thoughts to kind of to surface more naturally, which I don't know, might not be such a terrible thing.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point. Do you know one thing that really springs to my mind? A saying is that, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
Why might it be that we wake up in a state where, and I find this sometimes, I wake up and I feel anxious or depressed before my day started, and I've just woken up. It's like there's been no cognitive thinking.
Yeah.
Why might that be?
Okay, there's some really cool research on this. So the current research, and Matthew Walker, who wrote the book Why We Sleep, did some of the research on this, and it's pretty robust research. The current scientific standing is that every dream you have is the memory is stored in the body, right? Even if you wake up in the morning and you haven't remembered your dreams, you have no conscious recall of your dreams, you have been dreaming. There's no way to stop the human brain from dreaming, right? So you've definitely been dreaming if you've been asleep. Over 60% of self-reported dreams are negative anxiety dreams or nightmares. Not a huge majority, but it does mean that's over 60%. That means the majority of dreams people report before they start doing any dream work or lucid dreaming, this kind of stuff. But the everyday dreams people report are majority anxiety dreams, nightmares, or negative content dreams. When you wake up in the morning, even if you don't remember the dreams you've had, your body does. And if you've been having anxiety dreams all night or depressive dreams, cortisol and adrenaline will be released by the brain while you're dreaming exactly the same way. Because, REM used to be called, in fact, in French, it's still called paradoxical sleep. The paradox being the brain is completely switched on when you're dreaming. The brain is so active when you're dreaming, you burn calories. It's like you are not resting when you're dreaming. The brain's incredibly active. It's playing through these scenarios. So if you're having anxious dreams or depressive dreams, the body will be responding to those. So could it be that, again, there are millions of people waking up in the morning with unremembered dreams, which have had a anxious, depressive, or negative effect on their body and mind. How would they prove this? They then got a group of people, they taught them to remember their dreams using a lot of the methods that I might use at my workshops, and taught them to keep a dream diary. Some of them wrote a dream diary, some of them spoke it out loud. It had the same effect. But it was about remembering the dream in the morning and then downloading and discharging it through the act of writing or the act of speaking led to improved levels of mental health well-being in the daytime, especially if they were speaking or writing down their anxiety dreams. And they are using that to back up this theory that the body is holding the anxiety and the depression of our negative dreams in the morning. And this would be exactly why you sometimes wake up in the morning, you just feel like shit. If you could remember, oh God, of course I feel like shit. I just dreamt about my ex the whole night. Or I dreamt about one of those annoying dreams where you can't find the bus and, there's kind of anxiety. Or I had full-blown trauma nightmares last night. Oh, well, of course I feel like that in the morning. And actually, if I can write that down or talk to someone about those dreams, then I help to download and discharge that emotional energy and don't have to feel like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. So it could be that.
When I read your book, Wake Up to Sleep, which is absolutely class, by the way, and if you're interested, read it. It's phenomenal. Just the process of reading the book seemed to change my relationship with my dreams. And I went through the process of actively, I'd have said to you before, I don't dream. I could, and what you've just said is right. I was dreaming, I didn't remember them. But it was mental how after a couple of weeks of just trying the process of trying to remember my dreams, I started to remember them. And I don't do this every day. I'm kind of a bit out of practice. But what I started to realize, and there was one moment actually when I really realized this, where I had a dream where I was in the car park at Kew Gardens having a conversation with the footballer Phil Foden, explaining to him about how...
Wait, maybe you do know him.
Yeah.
But do you know him in real life?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. And I just think he's a really good football player. And I was talking to him about how to handle life in the public eye because I was a rock star.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right. And I woke up and I remembered the dream because it was quite profound. I was like, wow, it's a bit mad that. And what I realized, the way I felt having had that nice dream, I woke up, I felt refreshed. And I actually didn't necessarily have, in terms of the sleep quality, it wasn't like an early night. It was nothing exceptional. I woke up feeling so refreshed, so calm. And the sad thing afterwards is I realized that actually I can't really remember any other nice dreams. Nearly all, I think you said 60%.
Yeah.
I think that'd be in the 90s for me.
Yeah,
I really do think it could be in the 90s for the amount of difficult, challenging dreams I have.
Yeah. That's a really good example. Firstly, I acknowledge that's horrible, for someone who's worked with traumatic dreams myself too, that I really feel for you. Like, it's horrible having nightmares and what we call bad dreams. So I just want to acknowledge that. And also that dream you shared, so in that dream, you were literally a freaking rock star in the dream, and you're talking to this part of your mind who represents professional football or professional sportsman. Super positive dream, right? If we look at it kind of symbolically and stuff like that. So in that dream, rather than your brain pumping out cortisol and adrenaline because you're having an anxiety dream or a nightmare, your brain's pumping out serotonin, dopamine, all the good stuff, right? Oxytocin, because you're in the position of power, you're sharing advice with a friend, your friend is a famous person. So in the same way, it's like the opposite of waking up at the wrong side of the bed. Our dreams have such a huge effect on how we feel when we wake up. And because our dreams are backloaded, we have most of our dreams in the last 2 hours of our sleep cycle. It is your dreams that affect you when you wake up in the morning. Of course, the overall architecture of your sleep, getting enough deep sleep, flushes the toxins through the brain, all that kind of stuff. But I think there isn't enough credence given to how the quality of your dreams can affect your whole day.
I'd agree with that, and I can't wait to get more into lucid dreaming. But before we do, there was a quote you gave, and it was when I first discovered your work, I was like, this is my guy. And you said a quote, and I might butcher it here, but it was something along the lines of offering a person with trauma and stress impacted sleep hygiene is like walking up to someone that's been in a serious car crash and offering them a plaster. And I heard that and was like, that is what I get when I've said I've struggled with sleep. That's typically what I've been met with, that sleep hygiene stuff. Why is it that sleep hygiene alone isn't enough for people that are depressed, anxious, traumatized or stressed?
Yeah, that quote is exactly right. I think we can actually look at the metaphor of, well, not the metaphor, the direct imagery of dental hygiene, right? when you go to the hygienist, like whatever it is, every 6 months or something, and they give you a polish and stuff like that, if you don't have any major fillings, any major cavities in your teeth, then going to the hygienist once every 6 months is all you need. But if you've got serious problems going on with your teeth, going to the hygienist isn't going to touch the sides. You need to have like root canal surgery. You need to have some like deeper practice done on the teeth to make them healthy again. It's exactly the same with sleep hygiene. Like if sleep hygiene tips worked, we wouldn't have the epidemic of sleeplessness we currently have. And yet this kind of, it's just so patronizing. Someone comes with like seriously like trauma affected sleep and they're like, oh, have you tried a warm bath? Or, oh, have you tried not looking at your phone before bedtime? It's like, fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Like, I've just been heartbroken, or I'm recovering from addiction. I've just come back from a war zone. You're telling me to have a hot bath. Like, God, it kind of, I feel kind of responsible for that. And I'm trying to really make sure that is not what we offer people, because there are fundamental changes you can make to your relationship to sleep and dreaming that will go way beyond sleep hygiene and will actually work.
I found that. This is one of the podcasts I've been looking forward to the most, because the impact in my sleep before and after your work, and I'd say I'm like level 1 Charlie Morley, and we can touch on all the retreats, the amazing workshops and all the things that you do. But where I'm up to now is I've read your book, Wake Up to Sleep.
Right.
And I came to, you do a 2-day...
At the Buddhist Centre?
Yeah. In Bermondsey in South London. That was incredible. This 2-day workshop, but I can attest to the difference that's made on my sleep. And I think we often look at the extremes. You mentioned people that have been in war zones, or even the most people that have been through breakups, but also there's people with stressful jobs. Like most people out there have stressful jobs. They're switched on. We're being given labels of insomnia because we're not sleeping in our natural way.
And also trauma is trauma. You know, whether it's from a literal war zone or a familial war zone, or the war zone of being bullied at school, or the war zone being bullied at your work, like trauma is trauma. Of course, there's trauma with like a big T, but there's also trauma with a small t. And there's a lot of people who are working with like really traumatic circumstances they're in and don't really label it as trauma. They'll label it as kind of high levels of stress and stuff. But I think also we need to kind of depathologize that term, not saying this thing kind of, oh, everybody's traumatized. But to be honest, most people are really. If you start talking about people's childhood and they're like, oh yeah, but I'm fine. And you're like, fuck man, that is not fine. What happened to you? Oh, it was only once. Doesn't matter. Yeah, but it's like 40 years ago. That doesn't matter either. The way trauma affects the brain is timeless. Like, this is why when you remember back to a traumatic event or even a really embarrassing event, you know, and you can start getting kind of red and sweating. I can remember playing Spin the Bottle when I was 10 years old and getting laughed at because I didn't know how to kiss. If I go back, I mean, I'm hot now anyway because we're in the studio, but if I go back to that memory, I will start sweating. That was like 33 years ago. And yet when I remember it, it's so clear. The trauma's so clear because it's like it was yesterday. So I'm saying like there are little things in our life, trauma with a little t, that can also affect us in so many ways.
Yeah, do you know what? So much has come to mind. That one thing that I remember is, I said something at school, probably when I was in year 8, so that's like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I said something that I thought was funny, didn't get a laugh. One of the bullies was like, Joe Tudor thinks he's funny and he's not. And I felt so shamed by that.
Yeah.
And this is such a small thing that I didn't ever think about, but for my whole life I carried that like that I wasn't funny. Anyway, I did this comedy course, and I just did a 5-minute set at the Comedy Store in Leicester Square where I got loads of laughs and it was great. But in my mind I was still carrying this guy that was 12 saying Joe Tudor isn't funny, and I walked on stage like, but he couldn't do 5 minutes at the Comedy Store.
And that is why that training you've just done in comedy is probably, if you know, I wish we'd done a study on that, if we'd have looked at the kind of the brain responses to that. But I would bet a lot of money on the fact that your neurological response to what you did training in that comedy would have been better than most therapeutic interventions we can get, because that was a self-induced therapeutic intervention where you went and basically integrated your shadow based on this past trauma from your childhood that was still being kind of affecting you now. You went and faced your fear. And I mean, that last line, I bet you couldn't do 5 minutes of comedy. So like, that's it, man. Like, again, sometimes the deepest change we can make isn't always in the therapeutic dyad. It's like sometimes like being in therapy gives us the confidence to do shit like that, but actually doing it, there's stuff we can do, like really powerful shadow integration practices like that. Like, what is something that you've been scared of for a long time that might have been triggered by childhood that you could safely and realistically face that fear in adulthood? And doing that, it can be so powerful, so much more powerful actually than a lot of therapies.
I think you're right, and I'm a big advocate for therapy, but I don't think it's, we act like it's therapy or antidepressants are the only tools, whereas I actually think when you actually look at it, it's almost overwhelming how many different things there are that you can try.
Yeah.
But one thing I kind of relate to when we talk about trauma is I made the mistake of just looking at the events, like the events that happened. And it's not necessarily the traumatic events. It might be one big one, as you mentioned, or it might be loads of little ones and just lots of different sad things that happened. It's not the events, it's the impact the events have on you.
Yeah.
Like trauma is a wound, isn't it? And it's the psychological wounds you're left with.
Yeah.
So two people could go through the same traumatic event, but especially we talk about childhoods all the time, but one kid might be met with loads of emotional intelligence, love and compassion, whereas the other kid's parents might not be able to give them that.
Yeah.
So it's like that to me is the trauma that I think most of us carry.
Absolutely. And the home that you go back to, like, did you have allies in your home? Like, you could have like a minor trauma and two kids could have the same like minor trauma, and they go back and one of them goes back to a home, like you say, that has support, that has allies within it. And the other goes back to a home where your brother doesn't really like you, your dad doesn't speak to you, and your mum happens to be out that evening. Like a little thing like that little thing that you went back to a home with no allies. So you sat with that trauma for just maybe one night. And then the next day your mum came back and you're able to talk to her and she said some nice things and stuff like that. But like these little things, like events that seem so easy to forget, but can have such a powerful impact on the mind, such a powerful impact. Like it's the same as sport, like sometimes you could do like a marathon, not get an injury, and then you're jogging around the block and you just turn over on your ankle. And it's like you still have that niggle like 20 years later when you turned over on the ankle. With the body, we don't see it as so strange. Oh yeah, this weird niggle that I had. I wasn't even doing anything. I've done whole marathons before, but I did this weird niggle jogging around the block. That can happen with the mind too. Again, I think we kind of look for these big traumas with a capital T, but so much of our neurotic display as adults can sometimes come down to these little things that happen to us as kids.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And one thing I found when I've take an example, I've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. Let's just say I've woken up and I felt anxious. I can't concentrate. I don't want to open this or go down this route, but things that might get labelled as ADHD symptoms, for example, where I can't sit still, I can't focus. That's not the way I relate to it, but I know that's how a lot of people do. There's a concept of yours that's helped me so much because I find it's like wired and tired. So I'm absolutely exhausted, but I'm wired.
Yeah.
And when my day goes like that, I kind of sometimes know it's going to be really hard at night to sleep. It's like I'm in a mode that's so hard to break. And I came across a concept. I don't know if you coined this or if it's something you've learned from someone else, of the parasympathetic drive.
Yeah.
And creating these little moments has been a game changer for me. So for anyone that's not heard of it, could you explain what the parasympathetic drive is and why it's so important?
Yeah, no, I absolutely didn't come up with it. But when I stumbled in that research, so much of what I'd been teaching up to that point made sense. So parasympathetic drive, it's like, I'm going to describe it as like a rechargeable battery in the brain. It's not that, but the concept is like a rechargeable battery. Essentially, every time you do anything relaxing during the day, like literally you sit on a chair and go, bam, you had little charge up. Think of like plugging the parasympathetic drive battery like into the plug, like you have a little charge. You sit down, you have a nice cup of tea, you have a little 5-minute charge. You do some meditation for 20 minutes, you have a deep 20-minute big charge. You do something like Yoga Nidra, a form of lying down meditation, the hypnagogic, big charge in the parasympathetic drive. Basically, anytime you do anything relaxing that moves you into parasympathetic dominance, which is the rest and digest system, you charge up this like rechargeable battery in the brain, which we'll call the parasympathetic drive network, right? Your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep at night is in great part predicated on how much charge is in the parasympathetic drive battery. You see this in a really everyday context when people tend to sleep better on holiday, unless they've got screaming kids and stuff like that. But generally on holiday, you're doing more relaxing things than during your work week. So people tend to sleep better, possibly because there's more charge in the parasympathetic drive. So if you are having a day where you're really wired and tired, if you could find like 20 minutes to do something really deeply parasympathetic dominant, like Yoga Nidra, or like having a power nap, or NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, or some forms of meditation. But actually some forms of meditation can bring you into alertness too, but something really, really relaxing for like a solid chunk, like 20 or 30 minutes, that's like charging up that parasympathetic drive battery and will give you that kind of that energy that you need to download when you're trying to fall asleep at night.
I found that is absolutely my experience. And I do have a meditation practice. I do some movement practices. I do Yoga Nidra, and we'll come on to the tools later. But what I found actually is like my little thing that, again, breaks this cycle when I feel wired and tired is I'll have half an hour. I'm quite in tune with my body and how I feel. So I know when the time's right. It's typically after lunch. That's when I feel the times. I give myself half an hour, and we've got an L-shaped sofa, and we sit in the corner. We call it comfy corner. It's so comfy. And I read a book. And I sit down to read a book, and I know that often within 10 minutes I'll have fallen asleep. And I only sleep.
Fiction or non-fiction?
Non-fiction, which is mental. Like often books like yours on the shelves, and no. But it's more for me. It's like my mind, my body is relaxed.
Yeah.
So for me, the parasympathetic drive feels like it only gets activated if my body's comfortable. Like that. That's just how I feel in my felt sense, and just making my body comfortable and reading, I just naturally drift off, and I never nap for more than 20 minutes. But the difference I feel afterwards versus before, and also the difference in my work. So I feel like I can get another like block of deep thought work in the afternoon after that, whereas before I'd be in that mind racing, can't focus, can't sit down state.
That's a really good example, because you're not only working with the parasympathetic drive there, which will help you at night, but you're also getting the benefits of a nap. And the benefits of nap are nuts. Like when I first started this work, kind of coming up to 20 years ago now, the jury was still out on napping. Basically, they said, oh, some people with severe insomnia shouldn't nap because it'll affect your circadian rhythm. Some people should, blah, blah. Now the jury is in for like almost the entire population. There are some exceptions, but for most of the population, napping is a really good idea. What is a nap? Any short period of sleep outside of your main monophasic cycle. 2 golden rules to napping. An hour or less. You could go up to 90 minutes. We work in kind of 90 to 100-minute sleep cycles. But once you approach the 90-minute mark, it's getting risky, because if you go to 90 minutes or over, you might slip into the deep sleep that comes afterwards, because you have a slightly different sleep cycle when you nap in the day. So let's say around an hour or less, and make sure your nap finishes 6 hours before your intended bedtime. There's something called what's it called? Adenosine. A chemical in the brain. It's basically the tiredness chemical. Like caffeine is an adenosine blocker, for example. So it takes about 6 hours for adenosine levels to build up in the brain, which is why often about 6 hours after you wake up from sleep, actually, you might have a little dip, 6 to 8 hours. So as long as your nap finishes 6 hours before your intended bedtime, that gives enough time for adenosine to build up. This is why like falling asleep in front of the telly at like 9 p.m. is a really bad idea for some people. You know, watching Netflix is boring. You fall asleep for half an hour, and then an hour later you try and go to sleep. And it can be difficult because you've dropped your adenosine levels. You know, your sleep pressure hasn't had time to build up. But what you're doing there is such a good combo, because you're basically combining like reading. Reading is nuts. The studies on reading, what happens to your brain. Usually with fiction, it's more pronounced, but can be with non-fiction too. Like your brain moves into a completely altered state of awareness. You're basically dreaming with your eyes awake, especially for reading fiction, because you know, when you're like reading a fiction book and you're suddenly imagining, your eyes are open, but you're visualizing, you're imagining this entire world you're entering into. So the brain goes into this altered state that is very close to dreaming. It like creates a bridge to dream, because it's like, oh, I'm kind of dreaming with my eyes open when I'm reading a book, because I'm imagining the different voices, the different characters and stuff like that. So you're doing that as a bridge, then into either some NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, or full-on nap. Yeah, no wonder. And of course, the benefits after that, like the brain boost that you get afterwards, are so good. You're like, NASA have done a lot of studies on naps, because when you're up in space, you sleep not even biphasically, polyphasically. You have like little 2-hour naps, but based on a kind of a 24-hour period. So every few hours you have like a 2-hour nap or less. So they've done a lot of studies on naps. And they found one study like 40%. You're 40% better at any skill, because NASA have to work with like physical skill, mental skill, like dexterity, because they're kind of screwing stuff into wall. I don't know what they do, but they like check a lot of different things when they do the NASA studies, and you are 40% better at anything after a well-timed nap. So let's all go to sleep.
When we talk through the tools, you'll see there's so many things you can do, and it can be so miserable and hopeless when you've gone to see your doctor and they've told you you have depression and insomnia, and it's like, well, what can I do? But actually the hopeful thing is there are so many things you can do, especially with the parasympathetic drive. But put really simply is you need half an hour a day minimum of chilling out, and it'll help you sleep at night.
Yes.
And the biggest for me, the biggest factor is like just feeling, how do I feel in my body when I'm chilling out? I can't be near a screen. I can't be. I'm guessing some people can listen to stuff sometimes with a podcast, maybe out you. But for me, it's like no screen.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on the other tools later. But the big one for you, you are a lucid dream teacher. What is a lucid dream, and how might lucid dreams might be able to help people who are depressed and anxious?
Sure. So a lucid dream is any dream where you know that you're dreaming as the dream is happening, but you don't wake up physically. So anytime you've been in a dream, you're like, oh shit, wait, I'm dreaming right now. I'm dreaming. That's a lucid dream. A lot of people, the first time they get lucid, they kind of wake up after 5 seconds because they're so excited. But with practice, you can be, oh, I'm in a dream. Whoa, no way. Whoa, I'm like inside my mind. This is nuts. And then you like know your body's asleep in bed, or maybe you've fallen asleep on the sofa. I'm in the cozy corner and I'm asleep right now. This is nuts. I'm inside my mind. And then you can choose what to do. So for a start, it can be just a fun thing to do. Once you get over the fun aspect of, I'm conscious inside my unconscious, you realize, well, hang on, if I'm conscious inside my unconscious, that's a bit like hypnotherapy. Yes, anything you can treat through hypnotherapy, you can treat through lucid dreaming. And it can be working with anxiety and depression. I've done 3 studies on PTSD treatment. So we found people with really heavy levels of trauma. So we had one study was 55 people, one was 100 with a control group. People with either treatment resistant or chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. We gave them a week-long workshop of lucid dreaming, teaching them how to become lucid in their dreams. Oh, wow, I know that I'm dreaming is a learnable skill. You can do certain practices that allow you to become lucid. And then once they were lucid, in their lucid dream, they would transform an aspect of their trauma. Now, a lot of them, all the dreams they're becoming lucid in were traumatic because they were having so many nightmares. So some of them actually didn't have to do that much. They became lucid in a nightmare. And the aim was not to wake up, not to go, oh, I'm in a nightmare, fuck, wake up. Because every time you wake yourself from a nightmare, the unintegrated trauma or emotional energy that was causing the nightmare remains unintegrated. And this is why we have recurring nightmares. We don't tend to say like recurring happy dreams, right? It's not a phrase, but we have this term recurring nightmares because every time you wake from a nightmare, either intentionally, if you become lucid and then wake yourself up, or spontaneously, and the nightmare gets so intense you wake up, it's like a therapy session cut short. It's like that internal therapist of the dreamer that's creating the nightmare, it hasn't concluded. So the nightmare has to come back again. So what we were teaching people to do was to become lucid in their nightmares and stay there. Just witness. No, oh, fuck. Okay, I'm not back in Iraq. This is a replay of my time in Iraq, but I'm not. I'm safe in bed. This is just a replay. It's just like a virtual reality simulation. I just need to watch and know that I'm okay. That was step 1. And step 2, we could get people lucid in their nightmare and then actually actively move towards what they were scared of. So like if someone was in a car crash, they would become lucid and they're back in that dream, they're in the car crash, and they would actually allow the car to crash, knowing that there's no one to die. Like, this is not real. This is just a virtual reality simulation. Like, I'm in a video game right now. Or they could make the car fly, so they had a different ending to the dream. Or they could kind of change the dream entirely. But having some sort of agency, some sort of like self-determination in a state which is usually characterized by lack of self-determination. The sense of I'm having a nightmare, it's happening to me, this kind of traumatic thing. So yeah, PTSD, we found that lucid dreaming was a really, really powerful practice. But also depression. There's a guy I've been working with who he had treatment-resistant depression, Matt Humphreys, and there's something on my YouTube video where I interview him actually. I think it's got Lucid Dreaming and Depression in the title.
I'll put a link to it.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
So he had heard about how you can use lucid dreaming to work with trauma and stuff like that. And he became lucid and he asked the lucid dream to show him the source of his depression. And the lucid dream showed him, or told him actually, the reason you're depressed is because you didn't grieve the death of your grandmother, who died when he was like 10 years old. And he was like in the lucid dream going like, what? Like, that was ages ago. Like I'm fine with her death. And then in the dream, he's like, actually, I'm not. Yeah, I wasn't allowed. I never went to see her in hospital. I felt guilty about that. I was never really allowed to kind of mourn her properly or like express my grief. All these kind of hidden memories started coming back. And in the lucid dream, he hugged this image of his grandma. And then he woke up with this kind of big emotional release. And he's been free of depression now for, I mean, that was like 3 years ago, no more, 5 years ago. And now he comes to talks and talks about it. And he's actually teaching lucid dreaming now. So one case, right? A case study of one. But if white crows, if you find one white crows exist, right? So we know there's the potential there. And we assume that if lucid dreaming can be so effective for PTSD trauma, then more perhaps every day, not any less debilitating, but more everyday experiences of depression, we assume that lucid dreaming could be a very powerful intervention for that too.
I can imagine that to someone that has never come across lucid dreaming or any of this kind of, because this is like really innovative, pioneering stuff that I firmly believe is the future. But I can imagine that someone listening to this might think, "Oh, this is a bit wild." This,
yeah.
But you touched on there that you've actually had studies done, and it sounded like one was. Did you say it was 100 people with a control group? So is that a randomized control trial? And was it peer reviewed as well?
Yeah. So if it's the first time you hear about lucid dreaming, and I'm talking like this, you're like, "What the fuck?" And so much so that I did a TED talk about these studies, and TED banned the TED talk because they were like, "What the fuck? This guy's saying that they cured lucid dreaming in a week using, cured PTSD in a week using lucid dreaming. Bullshit." And even they wouldn't accept it until we showed them all the science. And they were like, "Oh, okay." And like a year later, they were like, "Yeah, fine." They removed the blacklisting. So I get it. It's the first time you hear it, it's kind of crazy. And in my world, because I'm kind of saturated by all the new lucid dreaming research and I'm part of quite a lot of it, it's not surprising to me. But yeah, if it's the first time you come across it, you might not even know that lucid dreaming is a thing, let alone it's a thing. It's been a thing since 1975 when they first proved it. There are dozens of peer-reviewed studies on lucid dreaming, and the real cutting edge of lucid dreaming now is to see it as a trauma treatment. But yeah, just Google it.
So you've got, is it Dreams of Awakening, your book, specifically about lucid dreaming?
Yeah.
The workshop we mentioned, the 2-day workshop.
That's Wake
London.
Up to Sleep.
But that only touches a little bit on
that's only got a couple of chapters on lucid dreaming. That's more the kind of breath work stuff, the Yoga Nidra stuff.
Which we'll touch on in a minute. So if someone wanted to, you do retreats as well. So you do retreats for veterans, but it sounds like you do retreats just for anyone as well, don't you? Have you got any coming up?
Yes, they're on my website. There are ones like the bookings are open for next year now. I've just kind of done a few. I mean, the cool thing about lucid dreaming, as you found actually when you did the sleep practices, you can learn from a book. And that's a good idea. I think probably what you did is best, where you like read the book first and then you come to a workshop to kind of put it into practice. Probably the same with lucid dreaming. So yeah, people want to come to a retreat or stuff, that'd be really cool. But also it is a learnable skill. It's something you can teach yourself to do. And I think the reason why people working with trauma can sometimes be so attracted to lucid dreaming is because you do it yourself. There's no therapist to rely on. There's no like religion to be part of. There's no cult you need to join. It's like there's a protocol. And you follow the protocol step by step, eventually you'll have a lucid dream. And you're like, oh shit, it worked. Like concrete evidence of results. And so much in the spiritual scene or kind of meditative scene, we don't really get concrete evidence of results. You know, we sit, we meditate, and we're like, still basically feel exactly the same. After like weeks and months, you're like, oh, actually, yeah, this is changing me. Just like with exercise, right? The first time in the gym and you look at your muscles, they grow. And it's like, no, you need like weeks and months and then you'll see the kind of, the big change. But the cool thing about lucid dreaming is you do get concrete evidence results pretty quick. Like the 2 studies we did, the PTSD studies, we had a week. These people had no lucid dream experience. Loads of them had terrible sleep. I thought we might have no lucid dreams in those studies. In fact, the guy who funded the study, the night before, he sent me a voice note on WhatsApp saying, he was obviously worried about where his money had gone. He was like, how many lucid dreams do you think we're going to have in the study starting tomorrow? And I was like, mate, honestly, maybe none. Like 100% PTSD. I'm looking at some of their like applications. These guys have serious trauma. We're talking about war veterans, survivors of childhood sexual abuse, car crash survivors. But it turns out actually, although they had really seemingly poor sleep, they had a very good reason why. So many of them felt so let down by the kind of medical and therapeutic establishment that something as like far out and crazy as lucid dreaming, they were like, yeah, let's go for it. And actually we had a lot of lucid dreams. So even if your sleep is really disrupted, you have really heavy nightmares and trauma, actually for lucid dreaming, that can be quite beneficial.
It just sounds so powerful. So you've touched on a few throughout, besides lucid dreaming, what other tools can people use that might improve their sleep?
Yeah,
how they
cool.
feel?
So the lucid dreaming, like when I run the 6-week course, it's based on that book that you read, Wake Up to Sleep. Lucid dreaming comes on like week 5. So we have a really firm foundation of getting people's sleep stable, and then we move to lucid dreaming. I know I've just contradicted myself. That's very different for the scientific study, but we only had a week, so I had to go straight to lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming it's about knowing like which tool to use for which job. So if you have really bad nightmares and PTSD trauma, which is manifesting in nightmares, lucid dreaming is one of the most powerful interventions currently available. Absolutely. If you're working with sleep disturbances or what's been labeled as insomnia, then lucid dreaming won't really have much of a direct impact, but there is stuff that can. So the first one I'd say is like psychoeducation. I think you said earlier, like just reading that book helped reframe your view of sleep. I think just basically we leave the education system in this country anyway, knowing nothing about how we spend a third of our lives. We spend a third of our lives in this state and we know nothing about it. The only thing we do know that we push down kids' throats is you have to sleep 8 hours a night or there's something wrong with you. That's the only thing we teach them. So we leave the education system knowing nothing. So I would say educate yourself about how you sleep. Read a book. Doesn't have to be mine, but read a book about sleep. Learn about sleep, but try and find a book that depathologizes sleep. Like Matthew Walker, his famous book, Why We Sleep. In a Joe Rogan, I think it might be with Huberman actually, but in a podcast he gave a couple of years ago, he basically apologized. He was like, I went in too hard with that book. I created orthosomnia, which is this idea of kind of neurotic preoccupation with sleep, because he gave so much data of how fucked you are if you don't sleep well, that people started sleeping worse after reading his book.
I didn't know he'd apologised for that. So
Yeah.
I
He made a public apology.
I lived in Australia for a while, and the mental health system was quite different. I was really struggling, and I went to a doctor who was a really nice guy, but gave me the insomnia line and wanted to prescribe a really strong type of antidepressant where it has like a sedative side effect. And I was in that much of a bad place. I was going to take it. And the thing that stopped me was the fact that I'd have to have blood tests every other week, and it cost me 200 quid a pop.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, because I wasn't Australian, so I was
Yeah.
like, do you know what? Maybe I'll look at something else. I ended up seeing a sleep psychologist, and I went to see her, right? And my first session, I'd sent her in advance this really detailed spreadsheet and a sleep log because I'd read Matthew Walker's Wake Up to Sleep. And as soon as I stepped into the room, she's like, Joe, you've read Matthew Walker's book, haven't you? She was like, the first thing I want you to do is forget any of that.
Wow.
You are not going to die. You are not going right now. You are not going to have a heart attack. You're not just because you read that book and it's like, oh my God, I am fucked.
Yeah.
I quite like Nick Littlehale's book Sleep. Yeah. So if you, I'm guessing most people listening to this will have done the basic sleep hygiene, but that's quite good for basic sleep hygiene. I think Wake Up to Sleep's all you need. And actually what I found from just reading Wake Up to Sleep was the dreams just the process of becoming aware that there's these other possibilities changed my dream world.
Yeah.
I had my first kind of, I suppose it was a lucid dream, where and it was as I was reading the book and I was aware of the concept of a lucid dream, where I was doing my local park run. It was the last 100 meters.
In the dream?
Yeah, in the dream. And at the last 100 meters, I was having a sprint finish. I had this sprint finish and I realized like, oh, wow, I'm dreaming now. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is mental. But then I woke up quite quickly. And
the moment you went, I'm dreaming right now, you were lucid. Whether the lucid dream lasts 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or 5 hours, doesn't matter. The moment you went, oh shit, I'm dreaming right now. This is all a dream. You were lucid. Yeah.
And I woke up and my heart was going faster. I was sprinting a park run and I could feel my heart rate going faster.
Like your brain thinks you're awake.
It was nuts. And I woke up like, what's going on? And I also had a really difficult dream. I won't go into the contents, but I woke up and it was a very symbolic dream, and I remember something quite nasty that happened to me that I completely repressed. And that wasn't lucid. I just woke up and was like, oh shit, I think I know what I need to talk about now. Do you know, it was quite powerful. So I can attest that just the psychoeducation helps.
I think the dreamer responds. You know, a lot of people say like, I don't write down my dream because they're so boring. And I always say your dreams are so boring because you don't write them down. It's like there's a biofeedback mechanism here going on. It's like bidirectional. Once you start trying to remember your dreams and then writing them down, perceived levels of vividness and meaning go up because suddenly you're seeing more. But also the dreamer is giving you more There's like, Jung called this the conscious unconscious. And there's definitely like, our dreams aren't random. We've all had it where just before the alarm clock goes off, we find out who the murderer is. There's some intelligence in there that's directing, producing, playing out the dream. Now, sometimes the dream is a fucking David Lynch film. It's nuts. It seems like it doesn't make any sense. But just like a David Lynch film, if you give yourself time to look back, okay, actually, he's kind of skipping the timeline there. But actually, David Lynch films do make sense if you just kind of step back and look at it kind of more creatively. I think we need to look at our dreams in the same way. But also, once you start like learning the language of your dreams, you'll be able to not even interpret them, but just understand them more. Like not every dream is laden with mystical meaning, just like not every thought we have is laden with mystical meaning. But sometimes we can have really fucking cool thoughts, really great insights. Sometimes we can have really cool dreams too. But unless we're kind of aware of all of them, won't be aware of any of them.
And that's a tool that can help sleep and can help with understanding is when you wake up, write your dreams. So I've done it in a couple of different ways. I have a journal and a pen and I kind of wake up and it's like, I find that I have to do it quite quickly, otherwise it goes.
Yeah.
I also know someone that really vividly remembers her dreams, but she kind of voice notes them.
Yeah.
She saves them and voice notes them and she goes into quite a bit of detail.
Voice notes, okay. Just you can like sleep talk, but it's hard to sleep right. So some people with voice note have these like recordings like, okay, 4 a.m. I had this dream. Oh. It's like recording them snoring. For the time. So writing is better, but yeah, voice notes are good. But there's something about like documenting your sleep and documenting your dreams, and not just your dreams, like waking up in the morning and writing down, it took me fucking ages to fall asleep, was in the hypnagogic for what seemed like ages, kept on having those intrusive thoughts. Like write that down, get that out of here where it's like clogging up your brain, and like release it down on the page. So write that, and then, remember this dream vividly, this happened, this happened, this happened. Like think of it more as a nocturnal journal, not just a dream journal. And then you're getting kind of even more benefits. And just the act of writing down your dreams, for some people, proves they were asleep. Once you see how the sleep cycle works, with dreams come at the end of a cycle, if you're vividly remembering dreams, you have proof you were asleep. Because also there's something called subjective insomnia, which is also a really common form of insomnia, where people are basically dreaming. Like we dream about our central preoccupation of the day, right? So if your central preoccupation is, I can't sleep, I've got insomnia, I'm really bad sleep, you dream about it. So there are literally dozens of these cases where they bring people into the sleep lab, they hook them up. There's like video in the sleep lab, little video cameras in both corners, right? And they're taking everyone's pulse rate and stuff like that. You film them sleeping for like 8 hours or at least 6 hours, like, pretty good sleep, like maybe not wonderful, but pretty good sleep. And then they wake up and say, see, didn't sleep a wink. And you came in, you offered me water halfway through. And no, we never came in. No one offered you water. They've been dreaming about not sleeping, like subjective insomnia, which is nuts. And people have false awakenings. So they dream that they've woken up and like someone comes into the sleep lab, offers them water and stuff like that. It's like, but the effects on their mental well-being the next day are the same. If you believe you slept really badly, you kind of nocebo yourself into really, and this has a term, orthosomnia, which is the neurotic preoccupation with sleep tracker data leading to lowered levels of mental health well-being. So it's this crazy phenomenon that they first came up with the term about 5 years ago. People are actually sleeping quite well. Then at breakfast, they're checking their app, their Oura Ring or their Garmin, whatever. Even the Oura Ring, which is the best on the market at the moment, is only 70% accurate. So still 30% of the time it's giving you bullshit, right? They're checking, only 15 minutes of REM, only 8 minutes of deep sleep. And then they are noceboing themselves into feeling really bad during the day. And then they do sleep worse that night because they have this idea that they slept badly the night before. This is nuts, right? Conversely, if you wait and you tell someone like, yeah, you slept really well last night, you skew the data. They feel better the next day. Like it's so much is about set and setting and so much is about expectation. So dropping this idea that you have to be asleep the whole night, dropping this idea that you have to have 8 hours sleep already kind of frees you up and you'll end up sleeping better anyway.
I reckon a lot of people need to hear that too. You mentioned NSDR or Yoga Nidra.
Yeah, non-sleep deep rest. So like Andrew Huberman's been really clear about this, and I really get what he means because I've applied for funding for scientific studies before. When you put Yoga Nidra on a funding form, no one wants to fund it because it's got the word yoga in it. Suddenly it's Hindu, it's religious, it's kind of connected to the kind of mysticism and stuff. So he basically just described what Yoga Nidra is, non-sleep deep rest, NSDR. He gave it this kind of medical sounding name. The NSDR protocol is exactly the same as a Yoga Nidra protocol. He said that. He said, I just scienced it up because it's better for funding forms. So they're the same, basically. There might be slight differences. Like in Yoga Nidra, you might hear someone in the recording say like, focus on your third eye. You'd never get that in NSDR recording. You would have focus on the center of your, the place between your eyebrows, something like that. So there might be slight differences, but they're basically the same. You can get loads of these on YouTube. Just type in like Yoga Nidra 20 minutes. Have a listen to it before, because sometimes when you're in the hypnagogic state, you're like super suggestible and super sensitive. And if someone's voice comes on, they've just got an annoying voice, it's really triggering. So like my voice is fucking annoying for some people. Other people really like it. For me, like really American California voices kind of trigger me a little bit. So I can't have that. So have a little listen to it before you put it on. But there's so many free resources there. And you stick it in your headphones or put it on your speaker, lie down, close your eyes and just follow it. And either you stay awake for the whole thing, in which case 20 minutes of lying down meditation, great. You do manage to enter that hypnagogic state, in which case you're getting all the benefits of Yoga Nidra, that parasympathetic drive, charge, all that stuff. Or third option, you fall asleep, in which case you get the benefits of a nap. So I love Yoga Nidra because it works even when it doesn't work.
It's definitely something to try. And you're basically just lying down, and it's like a body scan, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, you're just focusing different parts of your body and relaxing them, which I found so helpful. What other tools are there that people can use to either build up the parasympathetic drive or just find ways to improve the sleep?
Breathing. So in 2018, I got the Winston Churchill Fellowship to basically go to America and Canada and study best practice in mindfulness-based approaches to PTSD symptoms in veterans. I think it was the catchy title. So basically, I went to America and studied like who had the best treatments for PTSD-affected sleep. And the two things that came up on top were Yoga Nidra, which we just discussed, and something called breath, body, mind, or coherent breathing, which is a form of breath work. Very slow, deep breathing. It's like the opposite of Wim Hof, which is like really kind of jacking. It's actually weirdly had the same effect. So with Wim Hof, you're like jacking up the sympathetic nervous system to such a point you have a big parasympathetic release, which is why also exercise can actually lead to parasympathetic drive. Not while you're doing it, but that wonderful exhaustion you have after you've been lifting heavy weights or doing a lot of exercise can still charge the parasympathetic drive, but a different way. So whereas like the Wim Hof method is like this kind of really intense breathing that kind of jacks up your sympathetic and then drops you into parasympathetic, coherent breathing is really slow, deep breathing. So breathing at about 75% slower than usual. So most people in the West today breathe between 15 and 20 breaths a minute. Coherent breath rate is between 4 and 6, so about 75% slower. I'm aware, ironically, that when I talk about the benefits of slow, deep breathing, I start to breathe really fast. So I'm trying to slow myself down right now. Why is slow, deep breathing so good for sleep? Because in many ways, the reason why we're so tired and wired by the time we go to sleep is because we're freaking hyperventilating throughout the day. 15 to 20 breaths a minute, that's not hyperventilation. When I was born in the 80s, it would have been classed as that. The average breath rate in 1980 was 7.5 breaths a minute. What the fuck has happened in the last 40 years to more than double our breath rate? Possibly the same thing's led to a doubling in certain forms of cancer and Alzheimer's and the kind of all the big four horsemen that are the major killers in the world. I'm not saying that, that shallow, fast breathing has led to those, but it's definitely exacerbated the symptoms of them. So we breathe really, really fast. Like the average breath rate in 1939 was 4.5 breaths a minute. So our grandparents or great-grandparents, depending on how old you are, didn't breathe like we breathe today. If you breathe the way you're breathing now in front of your grandparents back in the 40s, they'd be like, slow down. It would be the equivalent of someone sitting in front of us going, you'd notice it. You'd be like, why are you breathing so fast? Like, we have never breathed as fast as we breathe today. This is also a big problem with mindfulness. Back in the day, like 2,500 years ago, when Buddha said, watch your breath, he was asking people to watch the breathing rhythm that we assume was 4.5 breaths or less. The reason it seems to like level out there is because there is an optimal human breath rate for a human being of average height and weight. If you're way over 6 foot or way over 100 kilos, it kind of changes, but let's say average height and weight, which is between 4 and 6 breaths a minute. And if you look at indigenous communities untouched by Western civilization, whatever the fuck that means, they tend to breathe in this breathing rate too. So we can assume that 2,500 years ago, when Buddha told people to watch their breath, he was actually asking them to practice coherent breathing, to watch your breath at 4 to 6 breaths a minute. Nowadays, when we sit people down and we say, watch your breath for 20 minutes, we're getting them to breathe at 15 to 20 breaths a minute. So we're basically saying just hyperventilate, be aware of hyperventilation for the next 20 minutes. So no wonder mindfulness isn't working very well for many people. Like, since I came across that research in 2018, I never just teach mindfulness now. Always teach people to slow their breath down. Do breath work until we've created a slower rhythm of breathing, and then we'll introduce kind of mindfulness. Because otherwise people are breathing so fast when they practice mindfulness meditation that so many of the benefits are negated. So breathe much slower than usual, always if you can, but because it's so difficult for most of us, give yourself 20 minutes a day. Like, could be 2 10-minute sessions. Doesn't actually matter if it's right before bed or not, because again, this parasympathetic drive battery, whenever you charge it, 11 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, it will still have the same effect on sleep. But at some point, spend 20 minutes a day, if you can, breathing much, much slower than usual. If you do that, it has a profound impact on sleep.
And are there any specific, I think you've got some on your website, haven't you?
Yeah, go to my website and the resources page. I've got loads of like free practices, free downloads of, because basically you follow a chime. So it's like bing, 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 bit less annoying. Or there are videos of me where I'm showing you doing it with Qigong movements. Because sometimes to slow down the breath in stillness is much more difficult than slowing down the breath with movement. So there are kind of movements of like breathing in, 2, 3, 4, breathing out. 2, 3, 4. And if you follow the movements, it's much easier to get into that slow rhythm than just trying to breathe slower. So yeah, there's loads of stuff on my website, and just put coherent breathing or resonant breathing, it's called. The people I trained with were called Breath, Body, Mind, which are really cool American organization set up by these 2 American psychiatrists who were like mainstream psychiatrists. Like he was, Pat Gerbarg was New York Medical School. Her husband, Richard, was, I can't remember where he's a professor at a big American university. So when they came out and said one of the best treatments for PTSD that we can offer you, non-medical, is slow, deep breathing with movement, people took notice because they were like mainstream, not kind of hippy-dippy. So I trained with them, and they've got very, very good research on this.
Because I've watched that video, and coherent breathing's been an amazing practice for me. I used to do Wim Hof, but after the difficult nightmare I told you about, and my body kind of went for a bit of a trauma response, Wim Hof and certain breathing types were just not an option for me. Coherent breathing was so gentle, so calming.
Yes, you can teach it to your granny, to your kids. Like, you can't overdose on it because it's a normal breathing rate. You can't. Like, coherent breathing is much more trauma sensitive. I think Wim Hof has a great place, that kind of breathing, because it's linked to some of the Buddhist practices, actually really powerful for some people, but it's not trauma sensitive. It can bring up a lot of stuff.
And I recently went on the website. The chime you referenced in your video is really helpful, and I'll put a link to this in the description. Good. I think it's available with a donation now. It's a small donation, I think.
Yeah, if you just scroll down, you just tick no donation. So you get it for free, but they've just changed the kind of cart a little bit.
Okay, well, it's a really helpful thing. So even if you spend whatever you can afford, it's worth it. So we've got psychoeducation, just teaching yourself about sleep. There's Wake Up to Sleep and other books we've mentioned.
Then Learn How to Rest. So these kind of 5 pillars of mindfulness of dream and sleep. First one is psychoeducation, like sleep awareness. The second one is rest and relax. So that's the Yoga Nidra stuff, the NSDR stuff, the napping stuff. The third pillar is breath work. So breathe slower than usual. The fourth pillar is nightmares. So looking at what nightmares are, the therapeutic role they're trying to play in our mind, and reframing our view of not only what nightmares are, but how they kind of work and how we approach them. And then lucid dreaming is the 5th pillar.
So this is the thing. If I can do one thing with my life, is to give other people hope, because I found the way we look at the things that, like depression, like anxiety, like insomnia, like the way I was told they were a medical thing that was something wrong with me without evidence, completely took all my hope away.
Yeah.
Learning about this, learning about your work is just so helpful. And it's helpful that there are all these things, and it is kind of overwhelming just how much stuff there is to try. So to my take, I was very much level 1 Charlie Morley work. I've done the Wake Up to Sleep retreat in London, which was amazing, and it was by donation as well. That Buddhist centre is incredible. Like, you don't have to.
I've got another one that's coming up in September, actually.
Brilliant. I couldn't recommend that more highly. Like, I'm not a Buddhist. Like, you don't have to be a Buddhist. It's just a really nice, welcoming place. So if you're available, that was great. But what I found is that I've kind of taken these tools one at a time. I wasn't necessarily ready because I'm doing therapy and all sorts of other stuff. It becomes overwhelming, and it kind of becomes like a chore. Like, I have to do all these things on my healing journey. However, my advice would be just pick one or two of the things you've spoken about, even if it's just do breath, body, mind for half an hour.
You only need one thing that works. Perhaps you need to explore like a dozen modalities to find the one that works for you, but you only need one. Like, if you're using Yoga Nidra and that's allowing you to sleep well at night, just do Yoga Nidra. Or if you like just want to do the breath work, just do that. If you're just into lucid dreaming, just do that. Like, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. I think there's that kind of choice. We can sometimes get like choice anxiety, right? Or what's called choice paralysis. But once you find something that works for you, use it. And you know what works for you. Like, you know what works for you probably better than a medical professional does with certain things, especially if they're intrapsychic. You know, if it's your inner world, you know that really well. My outer world, I can't tell where I've torn a ligament in my knee. I'm going to go to a doctor, tell me. But my inner world, actually, very often we do know more about our inner world than someone outside. And for people giving us these diagnoses when they are not close to our inner world, it can be really unhelpful, I think, sometimes.
So I think we've given people quite a few entry points throughout the podcast. There's the books, there's your website with resources, there's the 2-day workshop in London, there's the retreats. I'll put a link to your website in the notes.
Oh, the facilitator training. That's what I wanted to mention.
Oh, yeah, fire away.
Because that is for any kind of therapist who might be watching. So this is a training that I run for the last, it basically runs every 2 years. So I've done 4 of them now. And it's a training for therapists to learn lucid dreaming techniques to offer to their clients. So it's like a 100-hour training. That is really good. Not just that it's a good training, I think it is a good training, but it's really good the impact it's having. Because now I've got like 70 people who've done the training, 70 therapists, and to see them now running workshops, leading retreats, and bring it into their therapeutic practice, offering lucid dreaming, work with nightmares to people. This is how kind of change happens. So if there are any therapists watching this who want to do the training, the next one is next year. The bookings will be open by the time this podcast goes out. It's a really good way, if any of this stuff has resonated, to learn how to not only do it yourself, but then how to offer it to your clients.
And is that just psychotherapists or anyone that works in a therapeutic
So basically,
kind of way?
it's 25 places on the next training. 20 will be given to therapists. So they could be art therapists, drama therapists, psychotherapists, meditation teachers, counselors, but people within a kind of therapeutic setup. But I reserve 5 places for wildcards, which are people with no therapeutic background at all who are just really into lucid dreaming. It's actually really important to have the wild cards. You get 25 therapists in a room, everyone just sitting there being therapists. You get 5 people who are really outside of the therapeutic paradigm. They like snap at the heels and you get a much better dynamic. So 5 places for non-therapists.
Amazing. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much for taking the time out today on a red hot
I think
London
we did quite
day.
well. I'm pretty sure I was sweating all the way through, but I was doing kind of like surreptitious wipes of the forehead. But yeah, it is freaking hot in here, but I think we've done well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, mate. Well, you've stayed until the end, so you're basically part of our community now. And I need your help. I've covered all of the costs of Caesar one myself, and I am running on fumes now. And trying to raise 1,200 quid to cover the cost of season 2. Every penny donated will go towards creating episodes that help people who are feeling lost and alone. You can also find all information about Charlie in the show notes and all the work he offers. If you want to join the Reconnect waiting list, go to reconnect.club, or if you'd like me to speak at your organisation, it's joetudor.com. Thank you for your help in growing the Reconnect community. Until next time, see ya.